Hi, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. This is Greg Sterling. I'll be getting started in just a minute. We're going to wait another minute as people are filing into the room, and we'll get started very shortly. Okay, we're going to get going because we've got a lot of material to get through in roughly a half an hour or less. If you have questions as they arise throughout the presentation, you can input them in the question window, and I will try and get to as many of them as possible at the end. But again, this is a pretty compressed presentation. So this is reopening retail, new rules for success, consideration, and action items as stores reopen. And my name is Greg Sterling. I have been in the local media space for about 20 years. I'm the VP of Insights for Uberall Market Insights. And if you're unfamiliar with Uberall, we manage um, the local customer journey, near me brand experience across a number of touch points. We manage the presence, online presence for more than 1 million business locations around the world. And today, what we're going to be talking about is this list of things here. The context in which stores are reopening, some of the e-commerce trends, what the store experience is going to be like, and then local marketing best practices and some final sort of strategic observations. But before we get into this, I want to say that just acknowledge the larger context of what's going on in the society with the protests and Black Lives Matter. Sometimes it's really weird to be talking about all these marketing tools and tactics, and there's all kinds of upheaval going on and really serious things happening in the world at large. So I'm not going to talk about that beyond this, but I just wanted to acknowledge that because sometimes it's really strange to pretend like these kinds of things aren't happening. So as we all know, almost the entire United States now is opening up or in the final stages of opening up. Um, and uh, this notwithstanding the fact that infections are growing in most places, not everywhere, but in many places, 21 to 24 states, I think there are more infections happening now. But we have made the sort of irrevocable decision to go forward. Um, So the question for most people on most people's minds is, there's a hunger to return to some sort of normal life. And the question is, when is that going to actually happen? And the short answer is we don't know. I read 125 vaccine trials going on. It's possible that we'll have a vaccine as early as the end of this year. But unclear. And many people are kind of pretending or acting like it's all over. Psychologically, there's this really weird juxtaposition between all the resumption of activity in the world and people sort of abandoning social distancing and going out and sort of resuming some version of their previous lives, but at the same time, these infections rising. So as I said, there's this kind of demand for normalcy that's going on in the world. And you can see it represented here in a Wisconsin bar. This was from several weeks ago. Lots of people crowded together, no masks, and so on. Um, one thing that I neglected to mention was that you guys will get the recording and the slides tomorrow. We also have a survey, satisfaction survey, that we'd love for you to fill out. I was supposed to mention that at the top, and I did not. But despite the sort of opening up that's going on right now, we have widespread concern. People, the majority of people are still quite concerned about getting infected and going into public places, notwithstanding, some of the loudest voices that are against the lockdowns and sort of hungry to return to previous existence. So what we've got now is a condition of economic uncertainty where the Fed is sort of talking about unemployment being a long-term proposition, but the most recent report where 2.5 million jobs were added or returned to the economy suggests maybe a faster recovery than what had been thought about before. So there's a kind of dual narrative going on. We'll have a quick recovery and then other indicators that suggest there's a demand shock that will have long-term implications and it will take years for things to get back to where they were. Roughly half of US households were impacted by job loss or salary loss. So there's been, this has been the thing that has contributed to the so-called demand shock. But at the same time, people expect to get their jobs back relatively quickly. And some of that is happening, but it's not happening uniformly. And what this has caused is a kind of hoarding of cash. So people are spending money on essential items, obviously groceries and other things, but they're not they're not using discretionary spending. This is the highest US savings rate as a percentage of income that we've seen in decades. And the question is, are people going to go back into the world and start spending again? And that really ties into the question of confidence. Do people have confidence that they're going to that the economy is stable, on the right track, that there's going to be job security? And what this survey reflects is that there's overwhelming concern about the stability of the economy and job security. So whether you're employed or you're unemployed, the sentiment is pretty uniform. So what that means specifically for marketers and retailers is that they're going to really need to take a hard look at their personas. So people have spent a lot of money and time developing these customer personas, and they're going to need to think about who is going to buy, who is going to be in a position to buy, and what are they going to buy. So this panel on the left is from Nielsen, and it talks about, it really sort of does a crude bifurcation between people with jobs who still have money and those who have lost their jobs or have had salary reductions and are cutting back or have cut back quite significantly. And it envisions sort of a market that's quite polarized going forward between these two segments. On the right, we've got a bit more nuanced approach where you've got a spectrum of sort of psychological or psychographic considerations. People who are ready to spend, people who are going to be cautious, people who will buy only essential things, and people who are going to be quite frugal going forward. So this requires some attention. Is thinking about which of your customer segments are going to be spending, and maybe doing some new work around that. So as everybody knows, on this webinar, e-commerce has exploded. It's been growing steadily over the past 20 years, sort of incrementally. The curve has turned up in the recent past, but we've seen huge gains depending on the category during this lockdown period. So this on the left is just a list of the year-over-year spending declines in different categories, and e-commerce and grocery are the ones that have seen gains, but e-commerce in particular. This chart reflects credit card present versus non-credit card present transactions. In other words, in-store or physically present credit card transactions versus e-commerce. And you can see the yellow line, which is e-commerce, much healthier than the card present line. And across age groups, spending is off significantly. Now, this has had a very interesting impact on certain retailers. So for Target is kind of a representative case. We could talk about a lot of different individual retailers, and we can talk about Amazon, but Target is interesting because in Q1 they saw 140% growth. I think Best Buy's growth was even greater, and 5 million first-time Target.com buyers. This is one of the salient points, is that there are a lot of first-time e-commerce shoppers. So in other words, people who might not have ever shopped at Target.com because they could just go into the store. Now 5 million more people showing up, and almost half, 40% of those are doing buy online, pickup in store. So they're still going to the store, but they're buying the product and then picking it up in some queue um, outside the store, basically. And this is fairly representative. This is Adobe data showing that across the board, there's been a huge surge in buy online, pickup in store transactions, and this is going to be one of the major trends going forward. So what are consumers interested in? Here's some two interesting data points that reflect consumer desire, sentiment, intent. Google said that searches for in stock, and that would include online and offline, grew about 70% in April. So people are very concerned about understanding whether they can get the item before they make any kind of commitment. This is especially true, obviously, for stores. You're not going to go into a store now that they're open. In many cases, you're still not going to want to go into a store and waste your time if you don't have confidence the item is there. Also interesting from Nextdoor on the left, same kind of sentiment. People want to know if things are in stock and available. That comes from all the shortages early on. And then very interested in local businesses. A lot of concern about the integrity of the community, the survival of local businesses, and so there's a lot of interest. And there's a kind of a paradox because people are more inclined to shop online now, but they're also very interested in supporting local businesses. So where that comes together, obviously, is if small businesses, local businesses can do e-commerce or have online transaction capability. And as I indicate on the right, real-time inventory becomes a strategic advantage for retailers, traditional retailers versus Amazon. Why do people shop at Amazon very often? Is because they have confidence that they can get the item there and that there isn't the uncertainty of dealing with going into a store and trying to find something and maybe not finding it. Very often something is in the store, but people can't find it. But the ambiguity or uncertainty around that is why many people go to Amazon in the first place. So if you can rank for product searches, and if you have real-time inventory, that's going to be a big deal as we sort of enter this interim phase from where we were to wherever we're going to be. This slide just indicates that a lot of these new e-commerce behaviors are going to persist. We don't know exactly how widespread there'll be. There's early indication that there's a lot of pent-up demand to go back into stores, but we're going to see a lot of these e-commerce behaviors keep going. People buying groceries online, these first-time buyers continuing to buy stuff online. The volume of things the proportion of spending online versus offline will shift. Some people say that e-commerce is 16% of U.S. retail. It's really closer to 12%, depends on how you calculate it. U.S. government figures indicate about 12%, but we could easily see some movement up to 20% within the next year, which would be, enormous amount of money. So what is the in-store experience now going to be? Foot traffic data are giving us good visibility into actual demand and real world behavior. So we're seeing there are a lot of dashboards out there, Ninth Decimal and Ground Truth, and this is Gravy Analytics and Placer AI. There's a bunch of them, and they all pretty much show the same thing directionally. They're showing returning to stores. So these are major retailers here: JCPenney, Kohl's, Macy's, Nordstrom, and Sears. And what you can see on the bottom is the absence of foot traffic. So we're seeing, from February there was positive foot traffic, and then declining negative foot traffic, and it's in terms of a baseline. I mean, this is not no. It just sounded awkward, but this is the baseline is February, and we're returning to the baseline. So people are gradually coming back into the stores, but still in May, when most of these places weren't open, but some of them were, you see that traffic was off 60%, 90%. In Europe, in IKEA, so IKEA just opened in Europe and the UK, and this was like a week ago, and there were lines apparently literally miles long to get into a couple of these IKEA stores, which just makes no sense at all. But it shows people's hunger to get back to real life or normal life or something that they had before. And this is kind of the sentiment expressed in this slide. It's better than being at home. As miserable as it will be to be in these sort of empty malls and with face masks and all the kind of extra precautions that are going on. It's better than being at home. People are cooped up, they're bored, they're stir crazy. So some people are coming out just to get out. Apple is doing a number of things like other retailers to ensure the safety and well-being of their customers. Masks, lots of cleaning. I don't like the word deep cleaning; it's overused, but nonetheless, um, uh, they're limiting the number of shoppers in the store, and this is a kind of a major problem for restaurants in particular, but for a lot of retailers. And they're doing curbside pickup. And encouraging people to buy online. And they'll actually do temperature checks also. So that's going to be another fun thing for people going into the Apple Store. So, you look at all this stuff and you think, well, why do I need to go into the store? I'm just going to buy what I need to buy online, pick it up have it shipped to me or pick it up at the curbside, and then I just won't have to deal with all the in-store nonsense. Although, as I said, some people are eager to get back into stores. This is an opportunity. I think Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, was saying that in terms of like digital transformation, they were observing among their customers for the Teams product and some of the other products, like 2 years of digital transformation being compressed into 2 months. And it's compelling people to make changes that they've wanted to make and to adopt products and solutions and approaches that they've wanted to do for a long time. But it's also an opportunity to do that, to innovate and to take some creative risks and to do some things that you need to do. Nordstrom, for example, is moving to 100% contactless payments, Apple Pay, Google Pay, etc. They have drive-through pickup, and they're doing a lot of stuff with video. Best Buy is doing that also with virtual service appointments, where you can interact with an advisor through video. So there's a lot of interesting and creative things going on here, and they all sort of turn into they all roll up under the notion of customer convenience, sort of customer-centric innovations that are good for health and well-being, but also for the convenience and benefit of the customer in a lot of other ways. As I mentioned, Best Buy doing these virtual service appointments, curbside pickup, of course, multi-channel buying options, and also very interesting, they've enlisted UPS stores, CVS, Michaels, and others as pickup is like Amazon Locker sites. So you can pick up your Best Buy computer, Chromebook, whatever it is, at these other places if it's more convenient for you to get there rather than going to a Best Buy. So one of the other things that I mentioned previously was the number of buy online, pick up in store transactions that happened for Target, 50% for Best Buy. So this is a major trend going forward. So now this is the context. We've got this sort of uncertain situation where people are wary of going into stores, but sometimes interested to get back to normal life. What does this all mean in terms of digital marketing? So at the highest level, going forward, you're going to need to be visible, transparent, create trust in your customers, and as I mentioned just a second ago, convenience. So visibility is all the stuff we talk about: local presence, customer communication, brand visibility. Transparency is real-time inventory, if that's feasible from an infrastructure standpoint, having clear policies that are easy to understand, and making and fulfilling promises to customers. Trust is reviews, responding to customers, doing things that maintain your brand integrity. Now, the argument now is like, oh, well, local is less important than it was. Everything is moving to e-commerce, so isn't all this local stuff, going to be sort of going to diminish over time? The answer is no. Offline sales will continue to dominate. The internet's influence on offline transactions is about 20 times the value of e-commerce. It's a massive number and will continue to be, although the percentage of spending will go up online. And that's that point: 88% of consumers research products before buying in store. That's pre-pandemic, but it'll continue to be that way. 36% of retail queries are branded, and the rest are unbranded, meaning you have to be visible in order to capture that customer. And most engagement on social media pages is at the local level, not at the corporate level. Now, most companies don't rank for products, right? So if you do a product query, you're not going to see a lot of retailers. In this particular one for Best Wireless Earbuds, Best Buy and T-Mobile show up in the local pack below the fold, but really only Best Buy shows up again as an organic listing in this search result. So this is an area of optimization that retailers need to do a much better job on, especially given that most consumers are going to start their product search on Amazon. In terms of Google My Business, you probably already heard all of this advice. You have to fully optimize your profile, update your hours, use Google Posts, both COVID posts and regular Google Posts. This is an underutilized tool that can be very effective in driving consumer behavior. You can also communicate important information. For example, if you can't change the hours, or there's some piece of information on the profile that you're having trouble changing. Some restaurants are having trouble changing the dine-in attribute. You can override that or communicate the correct information through Google Posts. Free product listings is something that many retailers are not taking advantage of. Product listings used to be a totally paid product in Google Shopping. They've made product listings free. You have to have a merchant feed, but this is a golden opportunity to rank for product queries. Every retailer that can manage to that has a feed or has the capability to deliver a feed needs to do that. Social media, obviously a critical channel, both organic and paid. Facebook has some of the same capabilities to communicate hours and basic business information that Google My Business does. Obviously, you need to make those updates there. Instagram is also an important channel if your audience is on Instagram. And Facebook recently introduced Facebook Shops and Instagram Shops. These are new e-commerce channels for small businesses and enterprises. These need to be explored and taken advantage of. Pinterest also can be extremely effective for retailers. Retailers should have a presence there. They can do e-commerce directly through Pinterest. You need to maximize your visibility and presence on all these channels. Yelp, of course, reviews are really critical. Yelp has a lot of coronavirus and post-coronavirus tools to communicate information. Take advantage of those, but reviews play a special role right now because a lot of consumers will be looking at reviews and things like Google Q&A for information about what the store experience is like. Are the lines long? Is it awkward? What was checkout like? What was the service experience in the store? Is it worth coming in? This stuff is going to show up in reviews. Businesses need to monitor and respond to these and take this information in and make adjustments accordingly. Bing, of course, can't be neglected. Very similar to Google My Business, not quite as many features, but need to make the same changes there. And then, of course, listings management across the diaspora collection of directories and apps need to have correct and accurate information there because people will be showing up, especially in key verticals, to look for information. Those also will rank, and so it's important to do listings management across the broader internet. This is an important time to reactivate your customer base with ads. So if you're not ranking or have trouble with organic visibility, ads are obviously, this is what Google always preaches and marketers always preach. Ads are a quick way for you to get visibility. CPMs had been, and CPCs had been much less than they were, but now those prices are rising. So where everybody pulled back on their budgets, there was much less competition. It was a golden opportunity to advertise, but a lot of people weren't. Now that things are sort of starting to return a bit more toward normal in May, prices are creeping back up. But local inventory ads, local extensions, local campaigns, these are all things to take advantage of that will help you reactivate your audience. Also retargeting. And video. This is something that is obvious but often neglected. It helps you rank. It's a zero-click, tactic to get more visibility on the search results page. You can also communicate a lot of information about what the experience of being in store or in the salon or in the restaurant or wherever through video in ways that text can't communicate. So this is a great way to create trust and confidence in your audience through video. Okay, and we're coming to the end here, just a few more. If you don't know about these are very useful tools. Everybody knows about Google Trends as a way to sort of track what consumers are searching for. Also, there's the recently introduced rising retail categories and shopping insights, and these things can give you visibility on consumer search queries around products in particular geographies. So those are worth checking out. So a few final thoughts here. I've gone through a lot of material pretty quickly, but you knew many of these things, and hopefully this is helpful. So the future of retail is very different. It's not like the past. We're going to see many retail bankruptcies. Malls will close. There will be fewer malls, fewer stores, fewer new stores opened, and stores will have a different relationship to online commerce. They'll be used as return centers and fulfillment centers as much as they are sort of entry points into the shopping experience. People are going to confirm whether there's inventory before going into the store. So if you can facilitate that for them, that's going to be really valuable and effective, and it's also going to get you visibility. In the near term, people will be thinking, get in, get out. They're not going to be lingering. They're not going to be spending hours. I mean, depending upon where they are and what their beliefs are, but generally speaking, it's going to be a much more targeted experience. And then, as I said, e-commerce will move from about 11.8% of retail to maybe 20 or 25% ultimately. And brands are all going to move into direct-to-consumer sales very aggressively. They're going to have to, because their retail distribution will be less reliable. The question really is the store experience going to be filled with friction and frustration, or is it going to be basically a pretty good experience? And that's going to vary from retailer to retailer, and that's going to have a big impact on success and a big impact on whether people come back into the store. So in my sort of concluding 2 slides, I'm going to talk about consumers and then what it's going to take, I think, for marketers to win here. Consumers are not going to want to waste time. They're going to want to be efficient. And previously they might have gone to the store first and then checked online later. The result will be shifted and flipped. People will first check online, and the store will be a sort of secondary consideration. And consumers will be very agnostic about whether they get something in the store or online. This was not true, as I just said. In stock, I'll emphasize that again, very important to have product availability. And you have to recognize that the entry points here are Amazon, Google, social media, and email, and text. Text is an underutilized retail marketing channel that I don't talk about, but should be utilized if it's not. Finally, convenience and trust are going to be the 2 sort of broad values and broad considerations that will enable you to succeed and differentiate. If you're going to have to focus on the consumer, and especially existing customers, and deliver the best experience you can. You're also going to have to be visible at every stage of the journey. That's always been true, but it's even more true now. And local visibility is critical for all the reasons that I've talked about and others that we could talk about. Loyalty programs are keys to customer retention and success. Lots of retailers have loyalty programs. Look at those again, improve them. That's a very important strategic tool now. And then omni-channel convenience. Before, online and offline were 2 separate channels, often competing. They're going to be integrated now. They have to be integrated, have to make those one team, or at least treat it as a holistic approach and not as competing entities. It's really about serving the consumer in a convenient way, and not about your internal P&Ls or your internal politics. So with that, that is the end. There was a ton of material. I hope I didn't go through it too quickly. Again, you'll get a survey, and you'll get the slides and the recording tomorrow. You can reach me at greg.sterling@uberall.com if you have any follow-up questions or want to make any comments. Please let us know how we can improve these going forward, and also let us know if there are any other topics that you'd like to see webinars on. And everybody have a great rest of your Thursday. See you soon.